what's up, everybody? You're watching Jermaine Morgan TV, and if you enjoyed that groove, you already know what to do. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. We're going to jump in. I'm going to give you some tips on how to keep that bass sounding great. Stay tuned. All right, so today I want to give you a few tips on how to make your bass sound and feel great. So I just want to give you some practical things you can do to help the bass that you currently have before you trash it and before you just buy something brand new. I want to give you some tips on maybe getting a better sound or a better tone out of the bass that you currently have, and also some tips on the bass that you might have that you like on maintaining that bass so you can keep it for years to come. Now, these are things I tell you guys all the time. I want to give you stuff that nobody told me when I was starting. This stuff I had to kind of learn by trial and error along the way. All right, so first things first, if you're not getting the sound that you want out of your bass, the main thing I would tell you to do first is check your settings. Check your settings here with the tone knobs and the volume and the pickup and the blend and all that type of stuff. So we know with every bass, the settings and everything are different. Like this bass in particular, I have a volume button, I have a pan or blend button with my pickups, and then I have a bass, treble, and my mid-range sweep and all that kind of stuff. And every bass is different. Your bass might be set up completely different. So what I advise you to do, I talked about it in another video years ago about setting your bass, but just to refresh some of you guys that may not have seen that video, I'll link that video as well so you can go and check that one out for more detail on this. But check your tone settings. It might be in your tone the reason why you're not getting the sound that you want to get out of the bass. You may have too much bass boosted. You may not have enough bass boosted. You may have too much mids going in your bass. The thing is, you want to go through and check your tone settings. And if you have a favorite player, somebody that you're trying to somewhat not copy but pattern yourself after, kind of study that sound. Study what it is that you like about that sound, what attributes make up that sound that you like, and try to go after that sound. And it's a trial and error thing. It took me a minute before I found a sound that I was satisfied with and a sound that I actually like. Now, I will say this, don't try to base your sound preference off what somebody else does completely, because your ears and their ears are completely different, and you might have a completely different sound from what somebody else considered is good. So don't get caught up in the whole, I have to sound like this, I have to play this bass to get this type of sound and all this type of nonsense. That's really not important. It depends on the situation. If a producer asks for a certain thing, of course, you know, if he asks for a Fender jazz sounding bass, you want to kind of go with that because that's the person that's paying you. But when it comes to someone's opinion over how a bass should sound, that's all preference. In my humble, honest opinion, that's all preference at the end of the day. So figure out what suits you. Out of the bass players you listen to, out of the people that you study, figure out which one of those sounds grab you and what sound you kind of want to hear coming from your bass, and learn what that sound is and keep tweaking around with these settings until you find it. Or you can look up some videos to get some ideas on how to set your bass. But at the end of the day, the only person that's going to be able to set the tone that you want is going to be you. Now, I do another video where I talk about the tone being in your hands. A lot of what you hear comes out of the instrument, but a lot of that is how you play the bass. Check out your hand position and make sure you're putting your hands in the right place. And again, I will link that video where I'm talking more about those things in more detail. But this is a quick overview. Just want to give you guys some quick tips of some things you can check right off the bat to make sure you're getting the sound that you want to get from your bass. Now, the next thing I will say, you may not hear a lot of people say this, especially if you're new and you're a new bass player, have your bass set up. And what I mean by having it set up, not just changing the strings and that's it. Like, have the strings changed and have someone professionally to go through and check everything on your bass and to make sure that it's sitting right. Make sure you have the correct string height that you prefer. Go to your local music store or try to get a recommendation from a good friend that you know who's a professional bass player, or guitar player. Try to get a good recommendation from them, of someone who does this type of work, who sets up this instrument, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually do more damage to the instrument if you're not, if you're not that techie, or if you don't understand how the wood works and how all of these little mechanical parts function. I'm not saying you can't ever do it, but until you learn how to do it, maybe get someone to professionally do it until you figure out how to do it yourself, and have it professionally set up, and get what you want as far as the string height, and go ahead and get the strings changed. Have them to go through and check the electronics, because sometimes what could be affecting your sound as well could be some loose wiring in the back. You might have some wiring that's come loose in the back, and maybe only one of your pickups are working, or something's off that's causing your stuff to not function properly. I remember having a bass before, and my third string, I didn't realize it, but one of the pickups wasn't registering the third string, and it was something, I think, with one of the magnets was off in one of the pickups. So it could be little minor detail things like that, and you may have to have a professional to look at it to tell you exactly what's going on with the bass before you just trash it thinking it's a bad bass. Because a lot of times, if the bass feels good in terms of playability of the bass, you're not feeling like you're overworking to play the bass, it might be worth it to have someone to go through it and just fine tune it and check everything, get it cleaned up. Some of y'all don't clean your bass up. You don't get clean. Your fretboard is looking all green and all that kind of stuff. Get all of that stuff cleaned out of your bass. Have somebody professionally go through it. Have somebody to teach you how to clean it properly. There are tons of videos here on YouTube where you can learn that information. And one of the last things I'll share with you guys as well is check your rig. Check the bass rig that you're playing through. Now, that could also be a huge factor in your sound. If you're playing through the wrong gear, that's definitely going to affect the sound. It's definitely going to affect you wanting to play in certain situations. If you're playing through a bad system and one of the horns are blowed or something like that, so when you're doing your slapping and popping and that type of stuff, you're not really getting what you want to hear, that's going to definitely affect your sound. So make sure that the equipment that you have is what you need to get the job that you need to get done. Make sure you can find something within an affordable price range for you. I'm not going to recommend anything because that's up to preference. I know what I play. I play TC electronic stuff, and I like it for me because it works for me and for what I do. I get the sound that I want by using that gear. I've been using that gear for about 5 or 6 years, but I would suggest to you, take your bass out to a few music stores, if you have any local music stores, and plug your bass, not the store bass. Plug your bass into the different amplifiers and that type of stuff, the rigs, the bass rigs that they have in the store, and see what your instrument sounds like through those different rigs. And that'll give you a better idea what will work for your sound. And one little thing I'll throw in there as well, some bass players don't know this, and I see this a lot with younger bass players. Just leaving your instruments out in the car or in severe weather conditions, that can ruin the wood. It can cause the wood to warp. So you want to be mindful of keeping your instrument in really controlled environments as far as the weather. Don't have it out in extreme conditions too long. I mean, it comes times where you can't do anything about it. It has to sit in the car for a second. But try to keep it in a controlled environment as much as possible. And one thing that I learned as well from an older player, he taught me this. Take your instrument out of the case when you're at home, and either put it on the stand or hang it on the wall or something like that, and put it in a room where music plays. And the vibrations sometimes will help to cure and age the wood. So you can have that really, broke in sound, so to speak. Not broke down, but broke in sound. So just keep your instrument out. When you bring them home, take them out of the case and put them in a room where some good music vibrations going consistently, and it kind of makes the strings vibrate and emulate that instrument somewhat being played. So these are just a few tips from me. And if you have any tips that I don't know about, I'd love to hear them, because I want to keep my instruments as well. I want to maintain my instruments as well. So I welcome whatever things little stuff you learned along the way. Drop them in the comment section below. You may help me and you may help somebody else. Hey, thanks for watching today's video. And listen, if you enjoyed the content, click the subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on my notifications so you can be notified each week once I post a new video. I really appreciate you guys being here, and check it out. If you want more content like this, and if you want to get even more in depth on the bass lessons, remember to head over to JermaineMorgan.net. There I have many more bass lessons. I talk a little bit more in depth on some of these subjects that we've covered here on YouTube, and I'll also have music. Most of you don't know, but I am an artist as well, so I do have music available there if you want to hear me really play. I have music there, so check it out, and I will see you guys on next week. Thank you. I'm out of here.